Amorphous Love. Translated by Zulema Castillo López. Cuidado de traducción. Lucia Canduelas Bazan. Good morning, students, the teacher said cheerfully as she entered the classroom. Are you happy your parents are here too? Tell us about their occupations today. Yes, we are. We answered in unison. In that case, let's welcome our guests of honor with a round of applause. When the signal was given for the protagonists of the May Day commemoration to enter, a group of parents, dressed according to their professions, appeared and lined up in an orderly fashion at one end of the classroom, remaining expectant for the teacher's instructions. All right, kids, take a good look at them and tell me who you think has the most exciting job so that person can introduce themselves first. To my surprise, the teacher's innocent suggestion was interpreted by my classmates as the beginning of a political war. They began to boast about the extraordinary careers of their parents and to promote them with the same enthusiasm that a party shows when it has to support its candidate. But I couldn't criticize them. After all, what kind of children would we be if we didn't think our parents were the best? So despite my shyness, I raised my hand and proposed to my mother. Abril, no one cares about your mother's zoo work, Rebecca shouted cruelly, causing the attendants to mock me. Actually, darling, my workplace is in the savannah, my mother clarified after listening to her. When someone asked who their favorite superheroes were, my friends said aliens or prominent figures dressed in tights and capes. However, mine was a medium-height woman wearing a beige safari suit, brown military boots, and a hat. What made me admire my mom so much was her extraordinary intelligence. Thanks to it, she was able to study all the living things of the animal kingdom. She was so exceptional that she now works in a wildlife sanctuary in the heart of Africa. Do you only study animals? Isn't that what veterinarians do? Ma'am, please excuse Rebecca, my best friend Camila said. He doesn't seem to understand the difference between a veterinarian and a zoologist. It's clear to us, but maybe if you share a job tale, she'll be able to make the distinction. What a wonderful idea, my mom affirmed, smiling. All right, kids, pay attention because I'm going to tell you the greatest discovery of my career. My mother told us that many years ago she traveled to Kenya with a university colleague to investigate an anomaly that had been detected in the local fauna. She said that the scientists took them to a remote area of the bush savanna, and when they arrived, she saw with her own eyes what had baffled the experts. This being at first nothing more than a sweet pair of rabbits. Yes, your reaction was just like mine back then, she assured, jovially, noticing our confused looks. That was until my colleague asked me to look again, but this time more carefully. In her own words, after agreeing to her colleague's request, my mom realized that she was watching a show put on by a puppet and its puppeteer, because the buck was actually just a mass of fur, molded to look like a rabbit. But what shocked her most was that this puppet was perched on the paw of a terrifying lion, which remained hidden behind the bush as if it were a curtain. My mother confessed that once she had recovered from the shock, her team quickly captured the main subjects of this bizarre story and then conducted countless studies on them to find any clue that might help explain their abnormal behavior. However, instead of getting answers, more and more questions arose. Although they had confirmed that the lion was carnivorous due to the remains of animals found at the opposite end of the bush, what prevented him from simply devouring the doe? What did he try to achieve with this exhausting performance, and why did he take on the role of partner? Likewise, my mother, astonished, wondered, how could the doe stay next to something that was clearly not of her species? How could she ignore the obvious threat and act as if nothing was happening? How could she agree to pair with an inanimate object that was controlled by a predator? How could they communicate if they did? How could she end up in that situation without realizing that what was beside her was actually a lion? And if she knew, why did she stay? It was my mother's duty to solve the mystery, and when she did, the case was closed. My classmates and I were curious to know what had caused the event. So I asked my mother, and with a melancholy smile she replied, it was due to amorphous love. Are you serious? Do you really think we're gonna believe that absurd story? If this doe really existed, she must have been blind not to see what was clearly a hoax, deaf not to hear the lions, or and mad to stay by his side even knowing what he was. I agree with you, Rebecca, I said calmly. No one in their right mind would stay in a place where their lives are in danger. Not even the animals. Of course not. If I were the doe, I would have escaped. It's the most logical thing. You're right, but then why do people stay with those who hurt them? I asked, a little sadly as the class remained silent. Tell me, why do some people ignore the red flags even when those are so obvious? Why do they refuse to listen to the advice of those who care about them? Why do they cling to those who smell like death? Do you know why? It's because of amorphous love, which is the strange and unhealthy relationship between prey and predator. The attendees were completely astonished by the sudden comment from a 6th grade girl whose usual shyness made her look at the floor and avoid eye contact. But this time was different because I was brave enough to raise my voice and hold my head high, which allowed me to see everyone in the room in detail. I didn't expect Rebecca's mother to be the first to catch my attention. I wondered why she was wearing so much purple eyeshadow. Then unconsciously I looked at her husband, curious to know what kind of sport or martial art he practiced to have cracked knuckles with a slight red hue. Finally, I looked at my classmate and I noticed the puffy dark circles under her eyes, which could be from staying up late reading or crying too much. I knew she didn't like literature, so it was obvious what the answer was. My dear kids, I hope this story has helped you understand that my work involves studying the behavior and anomalies of living things in the animal kingdom. I am aware that some of these attitudes may be reflected in real life, so I want you to know that the lion never stopped seeing the doe as his prey. Even if the doe thought she could change the feline's nature, that was never going to happen. So I ask you to please make use of your senses and your judgment, because that's the only way you can avoid falling into a predator's trap. When my mother finished her reflection, the bell rang, marking the end of the class. The teacher said goodbye to us, and my classmates went to join their parents before leaving the room, except for Rebecca. She came up to me looking sad and apologized for being mean. I just smiled, hugged her, and told her that it was never too late to start over. She was moved and told me she would work hard to become a better friend and a better daughter, someone who could lead her dysfunctional family back on the right path. I wished her well from the bottom of my heart. After that, we said goodbye to return to our parents' side. Then, my dear mother and I held hands to go home together. Mommy, can I ask you a question? Of course you can, sweetie. The person who went with you on that investigation, was he a lion? I asked innocently, not expecting it would unsettle my mom, but fortunately she composed herself after a moment. Yes, she replied with a smile. That project helped me to open my eyes, and after it ended, a great blessing came into my life. And it makes me so happy that I think I'm the luckiest person in the world. Thank you, Mommy, for surviving, for getting up and for loving me. I whispered, moved as I hugged her fervently. Thank you, sweetheart, for teaching me what true love is. Amorphous Love. Translated by Zulema Castillo López. Cuidado de traducción. Lucia Canduelas Bazán.